everyone. Welcome back, South Philly Sauce, an Audacy original brought to you by 94 WIP and Jack Daniels. I'm Morganti, Ashlyn, Sullivan, here with another week of all the Flyers news. There is a little over 20 games remaining this season. We are in crunch time right now, and the last we left you, we were previewing the Flyers weekend. So it was a game against the Rangers, a game against the Penguins. You don't get much better than that with Flyers hockey. And Al made the point, if you get 3 out of 4 points this weekend, stamp it. You're feeling good about the playoffs, run with it. Well, the Flyers got 0 out of 4 points. So there's that.
Yeah, they got 0 out of 4 points, and I feel good.
Weird.
It's strange because you look at what happened, and you really pull it apart, so to speak. So they play Saturday, and they get beat 2-1 in a really good game against the Ranger team that was not on a run of 9 in a row. Mm-hmm. And I thought, without Konechny, mind you.
I thought this was going to be ugly.
Without Konechny. Yeah. And they come in, and that was a heck of a game. So then they go to next day against Pittsburgh, and they lose 7-6, and the backup goaltender was god-awful, and Pittsburgh lets in 6. So I'm thinking, I actually feel worse if I'm a Penguin fan. The Flyers were terrible, and you only beat them 7-6 on a real free-for-all for everybody in the game. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, the Devils blow a game against Tampa. I had to scramble to come back in one game, and I'm looking at it and going, you know what? You don't have Konechny. You used your backup goaltender. The Penguins were awful. The Devils were worse. So even if it's like by subtraction, I'm like, I feel pretty good about the playoff chances.
Yeah, no, when you put it like that, you should feel good. And when you look at the playoff race here, you have that you really didn't lose much ground because the Devils lost as well on Sunday. And that's really, in the grand scheme of things, that's what matters right now is this cushion. And if the Devils keep doing what they're doing, if the Flyers lose a couple, they're all right.
Look at the Devils. Like, what's the storyline in New Jersey? We got to fire the coach. That's how bad it is there right now. And we got to get a goaltender. Yeah. They waited forever. Pittsburgh, there's actually talk about, do we have to trade Crosby? Please, get him. I don't need any more Crosby against the Flyers. But, I mean, really, you look at it, Tampa, struggling too. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you know what? They're in pretty good shape here. Now, I don't think it's going to alter what they do with the trade deadline. But for a lost weekend, it wasn't as deep in the sauce as I thought it was going to be.
100%. And right now you have the Flyers. They're 67 points. They're third in the Metro, so they're still in a playoff spot, even with all this going on. The Devils have 62 points. So it all goes, that game in April against the Devils is going to be everything.
You think so, unless they can't win the Devils. I mean, watching them play and like, I'm going, my God, what a mess. And at least the Flyers, I look at it and go, for as much as I want to complain about the weekend, I look at it and say, if you're Forster, you look at it and say, this is what it's supposed to be like. If you're York, if you're Drysdale got hurt, that's another issue. But it's like,
we'll discuss.
Yeah, we'll discuss. But I mean, if you're those players coming up, you got a taste of what it's like, what it's supposed to be in Philadelphia, how big the games are, how important, what that crowd can be like. Fight that brings everything to the fore. Mm-hmm. It was a loud place with a lot of pressure against a rival. So even if you didn't come out of it with the W, I think you came out of it with a lot of pluses for young players on a pressure situation that you really played pretty well. You played 2 games, you lost by 2 goals, and I'm looking on the bright side, so to speak. But I looked at it and went, my God, for a lost weekend, I'm not feeling that bad.
No, you're right. And Danny Briere has been saying that really this whole season, that the opportunity the young guys are getting this season is worth more than anything. And especially for the Flyers, I keep going back to, I thought one of the worst games of the season was that Black Friday game against the Rangers.
Yes.
Where it felt like a Rangers home game, and the Flyers a lot of times just look uncompetitive. So when you go to that game over the weekend against the Rangers, that 2-1 game, massive improvements from the game before that they played.
Massive improvements. And look, I mean, I don't know what anybody's feeling is with fighting, but I mean, if you weren't energized by the Delorier fight with Remke,
one of the best fights of the year.
Oh, it was one of the best fights in the past 5 years. Mm-hmm. And people can say you're a knuckle dragger for you like the fights or whatever, but I thought it was unbelievable. I think the Rangers have a real problem with this kid because he got in a fight the next night and he got in a fight the one before, and he in my opinion, at 21 years old, he just absorbs too many hits. He technically wasn't really defensive. Delorier really got some good ones. And then mind you, this kid's 6'8", so he should be able to keep his distance. If I were the Rangers, I'd be a little careful with this guy because yeah, you want the energy, but boy, he took a lot of punches in his first few games here. And Delorier that place went bonkers. It went nuts. And I think it really did provide some energy. I'm not saying that you want to go back to the line dance days, but I do think that it really does provide something. There was an energy there. And I give the kid credit. I mean, if you're Delorier, there aren't many guys want to go with you, and you that's your job. And I was in the building. I saw before the game where they kind of asked each other if they wanted to dance, and this kid ain't going to turn down a dance. Mm-hmm. And it took all of 3 minutes to get going, and I do think it really rocketed that crowd.
Amazing. And I have a feeling the Rangers probably have a meeting scheduled. I would imagine so.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. I mean, you really got to be. He's got to be careful. I mean, I know you want to go. And he got a goal in the game off his butt, and he seemed okay afterwards. But man, that's absorbent. And I think people dismiss how much damage is done in a fight because it's like, okay, he'll come back and do it again or whatever. But you saw Delorier's, his punking afterwards. Man, he was pretty mashed up. And even though they've got helmets and whatever, sometimes it's worse on your hands. Mm-hmm. This kid's already take a ton of punches. I'd be a little careful with him.
100%. And if you haven't watched the fight, go Google it and then go look on the Flyers Instagram because you see the bruised face of Delorier the next day, and it's like, oh, this is what happened to him. Let's go over some storylines of the weekend because this is going to impact going forward. Number one, we got to talk about Cal Peterson. I know you don't want to, but we got to.
Yeah. When on Thursday, I guess it was, or Friday, when I went to practice, Torts afterwards, people were asking about the goaltending situation. He says, I'm not going to kill Ersson. Mm-hmm. So that meant you were going to use this backup goaltender, and it was not good. No. It was not good at all. He's already this is a big opportunity for him. He makes a lot of money. He got paid previously in his previous setting where he got the money, and it came in, and it was just, the other goalie wasn't very good either. But Peterson, he really cost them a game. It was a very bad performance. And I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, you can say you bring up Sandstrom. Maybe you do that. You're not going to kill Ersson. I mean, back-to-back games, you're not going to do it. It's too much, too taxing. Now, if you're at the end of the season, you have to get two absolutely to get in the maybe then. Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, I'm thinking that they may use Plan C.
Yeah, you could see that happening. And then in Cal Peterson's defense, so he allows in 7 goals. That was only his second start in 106 games, or 106 days. So I get that, and then you have the argument, okay, well, then you need to start him more if you're going to give him the emphasis. But then not with the state of the season, you can't.
No connecting. You down a defenseman. Yeah, there's all kinds of reasons. Crosby 5 points. But no, you needed a big saves. That was disheartening if you're a player. I mean, they're going to turn on your goaltender, and you can look at goaltending 2 ways. Every save's a miracle, or he should have every one.
Right.
I mean, people look at it one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, I don't think there'd be much confidence in him. I know the fan base is not going to have much confidence in him. And it can get ugly. If that was at home, that would have been an ugly scene from the home crowd.
100%. And then you have some taxing injuries for sure over the weekend. So Travis Konechny, he didn't play all weekend with an upper body injury. We're waiting to hear what's going on with that. But the most concerning, in my opinion, is Jamie Drysdale, who it looked like an identical injury to what he had before, which was a torn labrum.
Shoulder labrum, yeah.
Yeah, it looked identical, and he left the ice immediately. We haven't gotten word. Hopefully we're going to get word probably at morning skate tomorrow, but it didn't look good.
No, and he looked like he was banged up anyway. I mean, this is the worry that you have because you traded for a player that has some injuries, and you're thinking, is he going to be one of those guys that can't stay healthy?
Right.
I personally, this is where it's so difficult. You're in a playoff race. You want to develop players, but you wonder if for his long term, it's not better to just shut him down for at least a couple of weeks. Just shut him down and say, try to get to near 100%.
Yeah.
And I think that I would go in that direction. I just don't think it's worth. Shoulder injuries are. I mean, York playing banged up like that. Shoulder injuries are tough. You're absorbing everything with your shoulders, and it changes the way you play. It changes all your angles. People say why doesn't the NHL, why don't they disclose injury? Well, I'm not a bad person, But if I'm on the ice and Jamie Drysdale's there, and I know this is hurt, guess what I'm hitting?
100%.
I'm absolutely targeting that, and that's another reason I think you got to really be extra careful with it.
Yeah, it makes sense. And now you also wonder with this trade deadline coming up. Okay, so say you shut down Jamie Drysdale. Now you're short another defenseman.
Ristolainen's out.
We don't know what's going on with Rasmus Ristolainen. That's another defenseman. You're talking about Sean Walker. What a great candidate he is.
Trade.
You need guys.
Yeah, and that's why, although you look at the standings and say, oh, I'm in pretty good shape, come next Friday, March 8th, you mentioned it, they get enough offers for Sealer, Walker, Lawton. You might be looking at a whole different team going into the last couple of weeks to go into a, quote, playoff crunch.
And I wouldn't put it past them at all to do that.
No.
All three of them. And they've warned everyone that is what they're going to do if they're going to get the right assets. And you can't be mad because they've said it all along. They're looking towards the future. But when you're this close and right now you're locked in a playoff spot, I think that your biggest loss there would be Scott Lawton.
Oh, yeah. And like he's feeling like, how much is that doggy in the window? He knows he's out there basically for sale.
17 points.
And how good is he playing? He's playing terrific. And I'm like, I talked to him. I said, Scott, you're playing yourself. You might be playing yourself out of Philly.
Yeah.
But I mean, he loves it here, and he, whatever I can do to help the team, shorthanded, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting with scouts on Saturday, and it was like, man, that a lot. And I said, yeah, he's playing really, really well. And I said he can fit in anywhere, and wherever you want it, you just plug him in. On the other hand, he's got term left. So that's a little more hard to absorb if you're a team. It's not like you're just getting a guy in the end of the year, but then you got to absorb some number there. Mm-hmm. So that might be a reason he stays. In addition, he's just a solid citizen that I really don't want him to go.
It would stink to see him go.
Really.
But this is all your fault if he does go because you were sitting next to the scouts and you told them all the great things about him.
I was sitting.
You should have said
I was with different. I was actually during the fight. This was amazing. I was sitting next to Berube with Dave Brown like 3 seats down, nobody between us. Two of the toughest guys ever to play in the league, watching those haymakers go. So that was pretty good.
That's a good stop.
That's a good
Nothing's going to happen to you.
No, I was safe.
And now you look at the Flyers, what's coming up. So the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Flyers' next 14 games feature 10 against teams currently holding a playoff spot. So this is a brutal schedule to end the year, and that's why people – and it's funny, I feel like in Philadelphia right now, people are like, they keep talking about the playoff run like it's a lock. Like, oh, like the Flyers playoff run that's coming in a month. And I'm like, whoa. Like, we're not there yet.
No, they're not there yet. I don't know that the tickets I'm always curious. I always look at things and say, when are they going to sell playoff tickets? Mm-hmm. And I haven't seen anything there yet. Maybe it's tomorrow. I don't know. But no, you're not. And a lot of teams aren't there yet. And they're like holding on to hope. Pittsburgh, one of them. So much as it looks like you've got a margin for error, and your margin for error, mind you, is because other teams just can't get anything going, no traction.
Right.
So I'm hoping that the Devils continue to slide. I mean, for as much as even if they do trade people, I do think getting that playoff experience would help. Mm-hmm. So I really, no matter what, I wouldn't hold up the future because of it. But I really do think it would be beneficial for so many different levels to get that playoff spot. Just to get in.
And I think as a whole, because they've been so public that this is a rebuild, in my opinion, just getting in, it speeds up the process.
Yeah, and just selfishly, if you're a season ticket holder, you want a playoff game. You haven't seen one in a while.
100%.
It's a whole different ball game. And if you're a kid like I think Forster's been terrific.
He has.
And these are big games.
Paling's had a couple of games.
And these are big games. That he's really shown up, been really, really important. Farabee, Forster have been really important in these games. So, and I think that's really the benefit you get from a playoff run, and certainly if you get into the playoffs.
And
the goalie.
The goalie, yes.
Ersson, that goalie.
Yeah, not Peterson. And just Philadelphia as a whole. The year that this sports scene has had, and if you would have said back in August that what was going to happen with the Eagles and the Phillies, and oh, by the way, the Flyers are going to get in the playoffs too, you'd be like, what's happening?
Yeah, it's funny because if the Sixers get in and go out in the second round, it'll be like the end of horrible. Mm-hmm. If the Flyers go in and go out in the first round, it'll be like
a miracle.
Oh yeah, let's have a parade, get this thing going.
In.
Yeah,
100%. So needless to say, we don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be entertaining. It's going to be exciting, and every week it's going to change. And that's why you should keep listening to this podcast.
That's right, because we'll be right there with you no matter what happens. And certainly next week, and the end of this week, is not just next week. March 8th is the trade deadline, but it's more and more teams are doing things before the trade deadline, and you don't want to be in the musical chairs where you don't have a chair to go, that you're going to move people. So I wouldn't think, it may not be that date. I think the next, starting today, I'd be on the lookout, because if the Flyers get the right offers, they're not going to wait till the very last day. They may be the first team to make the move.
Buckle up. It's going to be exciting. Thanks for tuning in to South Philly Sauce, an Audacy Original, brought to you by 94 WIP and Jack Daniels. We'll see you later on this week.